Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Yeah, I have some of that kind of footage. Playing some of it right now. Yeah, big flames, looks dangerous. Well, I probably don't have enough for a whole program. Okay, let me check. Murray, let me put you on speakerphone, okay? Murray, you there?
Yep, right here. So what do you have?
Well, like I said, not much. I mean, I do have shots of big fires, but I was planning to...
Yeah, okay. Yeah, thanks. Hey, take care of that, will you?
Murray?
Hey, yeah, I'm here. Sorry about that. Anyway, like I was saying, it seems to me this thing would sell better if we had more action. Some drama. You know what I mean?
I hear you. But I also want to remind you that I've been researching and shooting this thing for the last 6 months. It's just kind of late in the production cycle for such a complete switch.
Hey, these things happen. So what do you think? Can you do it?
Sure. I could do it. But what about the educational objectives that have been driving this whole program? If this is going to high school student...
Hang on a second, Scott. Be right back.
Sounds like business as usual with Murray. What happened this time?
He saw some show on TV last night full of these sensational fire shots. Well, now he wants my film to look just like it.
Yeah, looks like you'll need the editor for a few more evenings.
I'm afraid anything's possible at this point. Heading home?
Yeah, I've had enough for one day. But like I said, the equipment's here for as long as you want to use it. So, you know, just be sure you lock up, set the alarm.
Okay. Yeah, I'll do it. Definitely. Thanks, Catherine. I really appreciate you letting me use your studio. I'd have a tough time finishing this film without your help. His help, on the other hand, I could probably do without.
Is your first draft done?
Almost.
And he wants you to restructure it before he's even seen it?
It's about the size of it.
Oh.
Scott?
Yeah, Murray.
Sorry, gotta go. Still on for Wednesday?
Yeah, no, I'm still planning to have the first draft of this film done by then. With this change in direction, you...
It'll have to wait, Scott. Wednesday, then?
Wednesday, Murray.
Ciao.
Ciao.
Oh, Wednesday, huh? I wonder where that leaves you.
I don't know, Catherine. I mean, I really had high hopes for this film. It was going to be different, educational, informative. Not the sensational news stuff where people are always running from huge flames like Murray wants it to be.
What's the concept again?
Underburning. How natural fuels underburning can help reduce the effects of wildfire on the forest.
Oh, uh-huh.
You know, I guess I just never really thought that money people like Murray would have so much influence over content.
Well, sorry to be the one to welcome you to the real world.
Yeah. What would you do?
Well, I have had some experience with our friend Murray. He's bought several of my films. And we haven't always agreed on content. But if I have a concept I believe in, I fight for it. And if it's really good, I can usually bring Murray around. So the question is, Scott, do you believe strongly enough in your concept to convince Murray?
Yes. I think I have a strong enough story to stand on its own. And I know what I don't want. I don't want to have to resort to the sort of lame tricks the TV newsies do all the time. You know, they just chase a fire truck, interview someone who's been threatened by a fire, and poof, you know, their story's done. I mean, it's like that old news saying, if it bleeds, it leads.
Well, drama and conflict are the mainstays of most entertainment, and that does include documentaries.
Yeah, but there are deeper issues here. Things behind the scenes that may not have as much drama, but are incredibly important to the future of the forest.
Like what?
Like the consequences of deteriorating forest health. Or how putting out every fire can actually increase our chances for wildfire. And the big issue, how can we prevent damage from wildfires in the first place?
Well, not much death or destruction there.
Precisely. But does that make it less of a story? See, I would think that prevention of a disaster is just as compelling as a disaster itself.
Okay. Convince me. I'll be Murray for a few minutes.
Just don't be as wishy-washy, please.
I promise.
Okay. The basic idea is to tell the story of these three ideas, how they're related. Okay, and the title starts it out.
Nice. You did that on this machine? Nice work. But Murray wants to know what that title means.
Well, Mr. Murray, there are several different ways to interpret the title. I was going to use that to explore some of those behind-the-scenes effects of fire I mentioned a second ago. I plan to start by showing a picture of a forest like this. dense, full of disease. Ugly, basically. And there's millions of other acres just like it. A lot more forest in the west used to look more like this. Open. Beautiful. Not much undergrowth. So what happened? What changed? Turns out that natural fire, like from lightning strikes, used to run through these forests every few years. Then the trees, it burned the underbrush. Fire was nature's way of maintaining forest health. Regular light burning transformed unhealthy forests to healthy ones. But since the turn of the century, we've been putting out every fire. We've prevented fire from playing its natural role. And now a lot of these forests are turning to this overdense condition. It's a disaster. It's a quiet one for sure, but it's still a disaster.
Why is it a disaster? Just because it's ugly?
No, it's a disaster because of the fire hazard.
Oh.
The fire suppression I talked about left the forest in poor health. Left it with the buildup of dead wood. Remember the shot of the historic forest? It didn't have much fuel, so when a fire did start there, it just crept around on the forest floor, burning whatever small amount of fuel might be lying around. It didn't really get hot enough to kill many trees. But when a wildfire hits a forest like this, there's so much fuel that it burns incredibly hot and kills most of the trees. You see these branches on the trunks of the trees? Fire managers call them ladder fuels, because a fire will just climb right up from the ground, right into the crowns of the trees where firefighters can't control them.
And that's when the cameras arrive.
Just like vultures. Yeah, news people love those ladder fuels. But instead of waiting till it gets to that stage, I'd rather concentrate on the real story. What some people are doing right now to reduce the risk of fire danger in the first place.
Which is?
Fighting fire with fire.
Oh, I get it. Burn the forest before it gets burned. Great story. Has anybody notified Smokey's office?
I know. It sounds sort of like it doesn't make sense, but it works. The actual technique is called prescribed fire. They use a low-intensity fire, an underburn, to remove the buildup of fuel, the dead wood, the ladder fuels, and some of the smaller trees. The larger, healthier trees tend to do fine. It's all done very carefully under controlled conditions. Oh, and as for Smokey, I checked that angle.
Fire is very much a natural part of our environment around here, and we're trying to emulate that with our management prescribed fire program. Smokey's message is to try to prevent human-caused wildfire. And Smokey's message about preventing wildfire and not playing with matches is as valid today as it was 50 years ago. And frankly, we're going to continue to emphasize that.
Okay, point taken.
No problem. Helping people see the constructive side of fire instead of just the destructive. Well, that's the whole point of this film. I shot all this footage on the Fremont National Forest where people have been fighting fire with fire for over 20 years.
In those 20 years, we've averaged between 12 and 15,000 acres a year, and with our annual costs running around $40 an acre, and that includes everything from the beginning NEPA process right on through the mop-up.
What really sold me on the underburning idea was what happened with the Kitts Mill fire. In '87, there was this wildfire in the Bly district of the Fremont. It was burning in a dense forest like this.
Hey, check out those ladder fuels.
So of course the fire was racing through the crowns when it hit an area that had been underburned the year before. Check this out. This is the side that the wildfire was on. Pretty much nuked everything, and that's typical with wildfire. And this is the underburn side. It dropped down from the crowns and started burning on the ground, where fire crews could suppress it. In this case, underburning transformed the forest. I talked to a guy that made a pretty good case for allowing fire to do more of that.
What we're trying to do with prescribed fire on the Fremont is to copy what Mother Nature did in the past. Short fire return, low fire intensities, and the benefits of that fire are increased forest health, removal of undesirable species, reduction of an accumulation of fuel, and preventing the catastrophic stand-consuming wildfires that we've seen in the last few years.
Oh, that's good. So your concept is how underburning can transform the forest into a safer and healthier place.
Exactly. The techniques they use to underburn are actually going to be the heart of the film. Now, I followed the crews around the spring to see just how they did it. It was one of the most interesting shoots I've done. Now, there are plenty of parts of this process that are dry as death, but this was fascinating. Right before they underburn, they start a test fire to see how the fire behaves.
Right here. or a little bit further down. Okay, if there was no more questions about the burn, we'll start off with the test fire right over here, and Guy, if you want to light her off, and we'll see if the conditions are right for the rest of us to get in there and burn.
Oh, Murray has a question. Are you going to cover when and where they decide to burn?
An excellent question, Murray. That's the dry as death part. It's not like those steps aren't important, but they just don't make for exciting film. Let's see. Selecting a burn site, done at a meeting. Going through the NEPA process, ditto. Coordinating with other agencies, meeting. Inventorying the site, that's done in the field, but it's pretty repetitive. Writing the burn plan, meeting or desk work. Boring. Waiting around for the right conditions before they can start a burn, that's a yawner. But the test fire, that's good stuff.
Well, I think you've made the right decision. Okay, so they start the test fire.
And they double check the burn plan to make sure they're getting the right kind of burn that their plan said they should.
There. Looks like our test fire is spreading good, and it's a go. All right, let's do her.
And now it gets really interesting. They know they're unleashing a pretty powerful tool, so they have their fire lines dug, their radios on, and their strategy figured out.
Ooh, what's that?
That's a drip torch. Pretty cool, huh? The problem with this kind of shot, though, is that most people think these guys are just out here wandering around dripping flame. But it's all very carefully orchestrated.
Our objectives here are to reduce the fine fuels in the 0 to ½ inch size classes. We set up the burn so we can take the topography and the lay of the land into account. Here we're able to use a backing fire. It's backing into the wind and down the slope. We're able to maintain a 6 to 12 inch flame length, which we found is ideal for reducing these finer fuels.
That's a lot of smoke. Is that a problem with burns like this?
It is for some people, but I talked with one of the folks on the Fremont that put it into perspective.
When a wildfire occurs in a stand like this, it creates about 5 times more smoke and particulates than a managed fire would on the same acres, due to the fact that a wildfire consumes all of the fuels on the forest floor and into the canopy, where a controlled burn or a managed fire only consumes a small amount of that.
So anyway, as the underburn burns itself out, the fire folks are watching to judge how well they did.
Calm it down a little bit. How's your line doing?
Yeah, it's doing real good. It's starting to back here through the more continuous pine.
Okay.
How do they know if they've succeeded or not?
Well, it's all results driven, whatever the burn plan requires.
The objectives of this burn were to reduce the white fir seedling density. They were to reduce the total fuel loading, to reduce the risk of catastrophic fire in the future, and also to maintain those stand structural components that are important for bald eagle nesting habitats. We performed this burn a year and a month ago. The results in this type of an area here, we had roughly a 95% reduction in the white fir seedling density, as well as about a 50% reduction in the total fuels. So we pretty much met the objectives of the burn, I'd say, quite well.
1.5 inch.
And these folks will continue to visit the site off and on for the next 5 years, measuring the results of the underburn.
Why is that?
That's their commitment. They want to know what effects they've had on the land and how they can do it better next time.
Another quarter.
And by year 5, they're looking to see if the site needs another dose of preventative fire. That's probably the hardest part for people to understand.
What's that?
The long-range view. You don't just burn an area once and think you're done forever. It's a continuous process. Remember that Kitts Mill fire I told you about? While I was there shooting, they did what they call a maintenance burn.
They burned it again?
Yeah. They want to manage the land more like nature always has.
Before this area was settled, fire was a frequent visitor here. The natural processes did things on a very large scale. To replicate that, we would have to bring in fire also across a large scale, and we can do that. We're now reintroducing fire across a landscape to replicate some of the benefits from it and using it as a tool instead of allowing it to happen. And we see benefits on a large scale that we wouldn't have seen if we had not used fire as a tool.
So they go on, year after year, trying to maintain that long-term view, despite the fact that their careers are pretty short compared to the life of the forest. So they learn as they burn, and they share it and refine it, and well, after 20 years of underburning, these folks here have a lot of info.
I think you should start with some ground that you think you can manage, but don't get in the trap where you take all of the easy ground first, and then you've got all the tough, difficult ground to deal with later.
It needs to get big in a hurry. You need to take advantage of lower cost per acre by burning large blocks.
We had winds blowing from several directions because of the storm moving through today, so we had to continually adjust our tactics.
It's really important that you give the proper thought to your NEPA planning and you involve the public so that they know what you're doing and they're involved in the planning process.
We can design the burn either through the time of the day or how it's laid out to make sure that we don't get high intensity or severe effects.
The cost of 1 year of underburning a landscape area is just a drop in the bucket compared to one catastrophic fire. And the smoke.
They really believe in the power of fire, don't they?
The power of transforming fire, yeah. They not only want to use fire as a tool to help prevent wildfire, they also want to use it to help manage for a healthier ecosystem. And ultimately, I think they want to use it to transform the way people feel about fire. Make it more acceptable. Pretty ambitious.
I think you're ready for Murray.
You think so?
I do. Look, one thing's for sure about Murray. He appreciates well thought out work, and you've definitely done your homework. My advice to you is stick by your guns. Give him what he doesn't even know he wants. Give him the film the way you see it.
You know, he never said I had to edit the film his way. He just said that we'd talk Wednesday.
I heard the same thing, and I don't think you'll ever get a better chance to make your case. Well, it's time for some of us to go home for the night. You gonna be okay here?
I am now, Catherine. Thank you for being such a good Murray.
I can't say that it was a pleasure being Murray, but you're welcome anyway. Looks like it's time for you to write your conclusion.
Actually, I already have. And that's the way Murray's gonna see it.
Well, good for you. I'll see you tomorrow.
Impressions of fire lie deep within our consciousness. We know that fire destroys, fire kills. And yet, when fire visits a forest, it can also renew, reinvigorating and rebuilding the forest into a more natural balance. If we choose to fear fire, to always suppress it, we merely delay and increase its destructive power. If, on the other hand, we allow fire to play a more natural role in the ecosystem, we might find that our forests, as well as our fears, are reshaped by the transforming fire.